r/AskReddit. What's your ghost creepy paranormal story? I have lots of stories. For now I'll share the one from when I was 10 and on a field trip. So I grew up in Northern Virginia, and we had plenty of battlefields and such to visit for school field trips. In 5th grade, my class went to the Belle Grove plantation, which was at Cedar Creek Battlefield. Cool house, still has damage to her columns from gunfire from the battle. Anywho, my class was in the kitchen of the plantation, listening to the tall lady talk about whatever it is you tell a bunch of 10-year-olds about plantation life. There are these big double doors on each side of the room, and they are open. And then we hear humming coming from outside. The teacher's aide, who I'll call Bulldog cause she looked like one, told us that whoever was humming to knock it off. But that's the thing, it wasn't any of us, and it was coming from outside. Bulldog goes out one side of the kitchen, comes back in and goes out the side that leads to the garden. She comes back in, says to the tall lady no one at all is out there, but she could hear the humming right there in the garden. Doesn't sound like much, right? Well, fast forward a few years, and I'm reading a Ghosts of Virginia book. There's a story about Belle Grove in it. Apparently the lady of the house was found in the smokehouse one day, badly beaten, half in the embers, with clear fist imprints on her face. She dies just a few days later. A slave girl was accused of the beating and murder and was hanged for it. And the lady of the house liked to walk in the garden, and was always humming. And various people over the years was witness, I guess you could say, to the ethereal humming that would take place in the garden. That just thoroughly freaked me out when I realized I got to witness it too.
You mentioned you had more stories?
Yep, sure do. So when I was 14, my dad died. No need to be sad about it, he was an ass. When he was alive, he loved to sneak up on people and scare the shit out of them. One of the ways he'd do that was to just silently creep up and chill out in the corner of your vision till you realized there was this asshole staring at you. After he passed away, I'd be sitting in the living room watching TV, and I would see him just glide up into the corner of my vision across the room and stand and stare at me from the front entryway. I'd look over, and poof, nothing there. Now this can be easily written off as me being tired, mind playing tricks on me, etc. But that isn't all of it. Dad loved to watch history and nature shows, and this was back when the History, Discovery and A&E channels actually played decent docs and biographies and the like. He was an insomniac, so he'd always be up late with one of these channels on, and the walls were incredibly thin, and I'd always have to beg him to turn the damn sound down so I could sleep when I was a kid. After he died, for a few months, at least once a week, I'd be in bed, and all of a sudden hear the TV in the living room, and it would be a documentary on ants, or a biography of Churchill, and other things. It'd spook me, definitely. My brother wasn't doing it, because for one, he's deaf and if he were to watch TV, he'd mute it, and also he had his own TV. My mom worked nights, and it always happened when she wasn't home. And at this point my sister had been living on her own for quite some time. I'd get up to see what happened, maybe the cat had turned the TV on, yay, but nope. Max the tuxedo was usually with me in bed, or outside, and I'd be able to hear the TV drone on about worker ants, as I made my way down the hallway, through the kitchen and dining room to the front entryway, and once I get to the spot where I could see the living room and the TV, all noise would cease. It'd be dead silent, so quiet you could probably hear a spider fart. But wait, there's more. After he passed, the locked, chained and dead-bolted front door would open all on its own, to let the cat in. This one happened in front of everyone at differing points over the winter after dear old dad had kicked the bucket. But the thing that really got me, is this event I'm about to tell you about. I was down in the basement one night, watching TV. My mom was home and in the living room. Whenever she needed me, she'd stomp on the floor to get my attention. And that night she stomped something furious. I raced upstairs, and she's sitting in a chair, with a wooden TV tray table in front of her. On the table was a styrofoam cup, and it was shaking violently. There were no open windows. There were no fans. I picked up that fucking cup and checked for wires and strings. Absolutely fucking nothing was attached to it, making the damn thing move. I put it back on the table, and it would shake again. Mom, of course, is saying it has to be Dad doing it. And nothing else, The creeping visions, the cat coming in through a bolted and chained front door, and the documentaries about ants being heard at all hours of the night freaked me out as much as that damn cup freaked me out. I knew my mom wasn't doing it. I checked and double-checked. The table was perfectly flat on the floor, didn't wobble, there wasn't a way to make that cup move, and not the table itself, yeah no. It just thoroughly spooked me. And Mom kept saying it had to be Dad, he was a trickster, yada yada yada. So I just shout out, if that's you Dad, knock it the fuck off, and it stopped. I didn't even finish saying it when the cup stopped shaking. After the cup incident, the cat had to wait for a real live human to open the door for him. I heard no more documentaries in the middle of the night. And I didn't ever see Dad creep up in the corner of my vision to stare at me. Okay, so this next stories are a little harder to believe. I mean, they happened to me, for goodness sake, and I even have trouble believing them. When I was 16, I started dating this guy, let's call him Joe, and he and his friends liked to do the whole ghost hunting thing in abandoned properties. This was back before shows like Ghost Hunters made it into mainstream culture. There was one they were very fond of, on a road not too far away from the plantation in my first story. When we talked about the house, we'd just call it by the name of the road it was on, but in the interest of trying to keep some anonymity, I'ma keep it to myself lol. So I'd only been dating Joe a few weeks, and one weekend he and I, along with 2 other friends, decided to mosey on over to this house and check it out. Now the story that everyone believed about this house was that this guy snapped one day, killed his brother in the barn, and then took an axe and went through the house and killed his wife and children. Inside the house, on the 2nd floor, some walls did appear to have been chopped at with an axe. It's unclear why he did this. Some say his wife and brother were having an affair, kids weren't really his, etc. And just to get this out of the way, I did try to find out the history of the place, but I never found anything to prove any of it happened. But its history, well, I'm not sure if it had anything to do with things that happened there. So anyway, we hang out and dick around checking the place out. Nothing happens. Boring, I know Harry. But that night, long after I left, I dreamed that I was in the barn of the property. Our friend, who I'll call Anthony cause he looked like Anthony Kiedis from our HCP, was with me. And there was this guy standing in front of me, telling me I could ask him any questions I wanted, and take pictures, but Anthony kept getting in my way and asking stupid shit. All I got from that dream was that this guy said he was a ghost, he liked to haunt the barn, and he was wearing a plaid flannel shirt with overalls, wearing a type of baseball hat, and he only had one arm. The next day when I see Joe, I tell him about it. I describe what the ghost was wearing. And then Joe looks at me pretty hardly, and asks me if the ghost was missing an arm. What? Yes, he was. Joe, how the fuck do you know? Joe says his sister would see a man exactly as I described and missing an arm at night hanging out in the hallway of their house when she was a kid, talking to a couple of other men. Apparently Jolene would get up to use the bathroom at night, see these guys standing at the end of the hallway, and they'd be gone by the time she's come out of the bathroom. I hadn't met Jolene yet at that point, and years later when she and I got to talking one day, I asked her about it, and she confirmed she did see an armless man all the time as a kid. But wait, it gets a little bit more weird. Joe and I had another friend, Tina. Tina had a little boy, and they lived with her parents in another town, but also somewhat close to the plantation and axe murder house. Her little boy would say there was a man in the basement of their house that kept talking to him. One day, he draws this man. Guess what he fucking drew? I have no idea if this thing was a ghost, or what. But the fact that 3 different people saw him in some way, years apart, but he always looked the same, just genuinely creeps me out. The other story with that house. Oh man. One night, total spur of the moment decision, we decide to head up to the house, because for one, we had enough people to cover all the areas of house and barn, and 2, one of us had a van so we could take 1 vehicle. We'd never had that many go at once, because well, when you do things like this it's best to not have 4 cars all parked in an abandoned house's driveway. So there were 8 of us this time, 2 in the barn, 2 in the basement, 2 for 1st floor, 2 for 2nd floor, and 2 for the attic. At this point, I'd been to this house numerous times, I've been through the whole thing and knew it as well as my own house, and I was not on drugs, had nothing to drink that night. That's important. So Joe and we end up as the two who get to hang out on the second floor. Except there's something there I had never seen before. This is going to sound so fucking stupid, but I swear on all my loved ones, it's true. There was a bathroom there that I had never seen before. I shit you not, I'd never seen this bathroom before. And it connected between 2 bedrooms, and it was big with a giant claw-footed tub. It would be really fucking hard to miss, you know. It freaked me the fuck out. And everyone agreed that we'd hang on our assigned floor for at least 20 minutes. And Joe made us spend that time in that fucking bathroom. I was seriously wondering if it would fade out of existence with me in it. It didn't, thank God, haha. But I went back one last time to that house. I went with other friends that time, and no Joe. We went though that house, and again, I shit you not, that bathroom was gone. I went through every doorway, and every hole in the wall, and double-checked all closets. And that room was just gone, like it had never been there. I still don't know how to explain that. I really wish I had been drunk or on drugs that night.
I shit you not. The bathroom was gone. That made me laugh.
Wow, I would have been both fascinated and simultaneously extremely creeped out if it was me, I think. Or maybe startled would be the better word. Any other stories? I'm loving them.
I do have more. I was just debating if I wanted to type more, and fuck it. I'll do it. If my fingers fall off from overuse, I can just do voice to text, right? So this story is another 2-parter, maybe 3 I guess, and is the most recent. My mom passed away this past fall, so I flew back to my hometown and stayed at my sister's for a few weeks while we tried to get things settled and all that. The first part is that my niece, who's 9, says she had a dream about her grandma, and that grandma said she loved all of her kids and grandkids. Pretty standard, common thing that happens with kids and loved ones who pass away. And then one day, I decide to lay down in my sister's bedroom, because it wasn't the damn bunk bed I had been sleeping in. Make a note, top bunks should be on everyone's myrtle list, and it wasn't the living room where my brother had set up camp. So I'm laying there, my back is to the open door, and I'm on the laptop fucking around on Reddit. And then something slaps me on my ass. I whip around, no one's there. Only person in the house besides me is Big Bro, who is just not a silent creep up on you type. Mostly because he's deaf, and has no idea how loud he is. If I hadn't been wide awake and reading submissions over in writing prompts, I would believe it was a hypnet jerk, or a form of hypnagogic hallucination, like with sleep paralysis. But I only ever get those when I'm flat on my back. I tell my sis about it later. She then relates the story of how one day she came home, and just stretched out on the couch, and had what felt like someone jabbing their finger into her shoulder. She said she turned every which way, and no matter what, she got a finger jab. So maybe they got confused and thought I was her. I dunno. And then I fly back home. And I'm with my so in our bedroom, and I'm telling him that it didn't seem fair that all the weird stuff happened when my dad died, but yet nothing happened to me with my mom. And I talk there's all these people who relate their pennies from heaven stories, where they keep finding change and are convinced it's from their dead loved ones, and I joke that it'd be nice if my mom did that but with paper money. And as I'm saying that, I reach for my PJs that are in a basket of freshly laundered clothes, and money falls out of them. It's 10 $1 bills. Crisp. Brand spanking new. The serial numbers on them are also in order. And it came from a basket of clothes I had just pulled out of the dryer not even half an hour earlier. Anyone who's ever washed paper money, at least US money, knows that it would not still be crisp and brand new. It would feel weird. This bills didn't have that. They even still smelled new, like they just printed. Thanks, Mom. Thank you for watching. Remember to keep yourself and your pets hydrated, especially your fish. Have a nice day.